Monday night game. We had the Wednesday Mahomes and Reed. Like, I feel like I'm starting to get kind of into the groove of things a little bit.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Kind of throw you off that Thursday game. So yeah, we're getting into it, man. Got a regular Sunday start time. No prime time this week. Actually, 2 in a row because the Bears game is a noon game too for you.
Noon games, man.
But I think these are the only 2 all year. They're back to back. So
we got to be thankful for them when they come because this is few and far between with the Chiefs. Did you catch Monday Night Football? I mean, just before we dive into Chiefs stuff, like I felt like Monday night we were talking about McCole Hardman before we came on. That was a little. I think he got one snap and it was on special teams. That's your man's, man. What you got to say? Issue a public statement.
I mean, I never really made any statements prior to him being on the season. So, I mean, I'm surprised a little bit. I thought he would. I mean, it's just one game, but I am surprised that he wasn't out there. I thought he's a guy that they could use, especially when Zach Wilson was the quarterback for 99% of that game. Just give him like a little jet sweep or something. Like, get him involved. The guy has elite speed. I was a little surprised by that.
The Rodgers thing is just. It's tough. I know a lot of the reverberations around Chiefs Kingdom are like, oh, we're never going to get the Rodgers and Mahomes, but there was so much buildup for that. The trade, the speculation, he goes into a darkness retreat. And I felt like the whole NFL world, even like casual fans were kind of bought in on like, all right, like let's see what a reinvigorated, re-energized Aaron Rodgers looks like in New York. And we didn't get that.
Yeah, it's not good for the league, man. It really is unfortunate. It really, really is.
Let me get my tweet out here real quick. Did you get yours out already?
They're not tweets anymore, bro. They're posts.
Oh, my bad. I forgot it. On X. Mark Gunnels he's an X machine.
I mean, you just gotta, Elon gonna get you, man. You keep calling it tweets.
I'm surprised he hasn't pulled up to a Chiefs game yet, to be honest with you. Like we got Jeff Bezos, we got Roger Goodell there out there. I'm surprised Elon doesn't land the Tesla.
Well, he still got 7 more chances to come to Kansas City this year in the regular season.
Let's get into it, man. Chiefs Coast to Coast, Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. This is episode 55. Mark Gunnels is in LA. Aaron Ladd is here in Kansas City with Steven Serta, who's back behind the board. Man, this is a jam-packed episode. This is recapping a week 1 loss. We'll, of course, do that as we do back in our regular season groove with a recap and a preview. We'll look ahead to Jacksonville. Chris Jones is back in the fold. We'll say the good, bad, and the ugly as the holdout comes to an end. Finally, talking about good, bad, and ugly. God dang, Mark. I mean, week 1, you couldn't give out one winner. You couldn't give out one winner to our audience in week 1.
Hey, man, what you say is not how you start, it's how you finish. You got a long way to go, man. I'm not going to get too high, I'm not going to get too low.
He started in piss poor fashion in Vegas, but he's back again this week with 3 more plays as the Chiefs try to get their first win of the season in Jacksonville. We love making y'all part of the show. Marcus just said, you got to just sit there. You like Kadarius Toney at the podium today. You got to just sit there and take it, man. It's nothing.
Come on, let's move on, man.
We love making y'all part of the show. 816-514-1267. Please tell me how much money Mark Gunnels has lost you. If you actually bet your house or if you put anything down, like that is, we don't have to be a question. It don't have to be a comment, criticism, concern. Just call in about your angst on playing Mark Gunnels plays, and we'll get those for you here on Chiefs Coast to Coast. Hashtag C2C if you're on X or Twitter or whatever social media. Joshua Bundy is tapped in with us right now on YouTube. Says, what's up, fellas? This is Wednesdays at 6, anywhere you get your podcasts on socials, and then, of course, Thursday in your podcast apps. Let's just get right into the recap.
Mahomes avoids, throws! He's a magician!
Chiefs recap.
We'll spare the details because this is a little bit of a while ago, almost a week ago by the time this publishes, Thursday to Thursday. Lions beat the Chiefs in week 1, low scoring game, which kind of screwed with a lot of the projections coming in. But the biggest point, or the biggest sticking point, especially after the game, I was there in the locker room and in the podium after, and especially on social media, I saw Mark kind of grappling with it, was the drops from the wide receiver room. We spent so much attention on this unit going into the season, expectations for what they could do around Patrick Mahomes, kind of a different look with Juju Smith-Schuster and no McCole Hardman. The wide receiver room kind of lets you down on the biggest stage on banner night. 3 drops according to Pro Football Focus, but there was a couple balls, and I'll put some on. I won't even put it all in the wideout because Patrick Mahomes kind of looked out of sync at times. There were some balls that were maybe behind receivers that could have been in better placements. So anyway you want to cut it, the timing was off between Patrick Mahomes and the wide receiver room in week 1. Mark Gunnels, as we look ahead to week 2, how do you assess the wide receiver meltdown that we kind of saw against the Lions, and what would you like to see against the Jags?
Yeah, so let's start with Kadarius Toney here, the obvious culprit of week 1. And it's interesting because he actually had the second least snaps out of the receiver room. The only one who had least snaps than him was Justin Ross from the receivers. But it's hard to tell that because in the snaps that he was out there, he was being targeted almost every single time. So it felt like he played a lot more than he really did. So I think obviously with him, there's no training camp, no preseason. He only had, I think, 3 practices before week 1. So I think rust was clearly a factor there. But one thing I will want to say to Chiefs Kingdom, and I tweeted this actually. I mean, I posted this on X.
See, there you go. There you go.
Was the fact that he was open, though. He was getting open. Whether it was him getting schemed open or is on his own bearings, he was open several times. And to me, I take that as more as a recipe for success moving forward, because I don't see him dropping several passes every single game. So I do think that is something you can take from that as a positive moving forward. And in the presser today, recorded on a Wednesday, he was very accountable for his mistakes. He said no excuses several times throughout that presser, and it was very adamant on how he needs to be better and make the plays when they are available to him. What you got to say?
Yeah, let's hear from Kadarius Toney now. He talked at the podium. I think we have that sound.
Let's go.
In reality, how I look at it, how I told Coach, how I told Pat, all the guys, that's on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, y'all count on me and rely on me to make certain plays, and I got to be there to do that. It ain't really no excuse, you know what I'm saying? Nothing you could blame it on, none of that. Man, I can stand on 10 about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you heard it right there. He's very, very accountable for his mistakes, and I do expect him to have a bounce-back game week 2. We know Andy Reid is kind of known for giving guys that confidence boost. Don't be surprised if the first couple snaps you see a ball get thrown to Kadarius Toney, whether it's a wide receiver screen, just to get the ball in his hands, just to get that confidence going. And, that should trickle out the rest of the game. And then beyond him, I mean, obviously, I'll be remiss if I didn't speak on Sky Moore. I've been one of the big advocates.
800-yard receiver, Mark Gunnels, because we talked about this and joked about this coming on, right? This is one of your big proclamation, your on wax things that you said in the offseason. You believe in Sky Moore taking the next step. You had him in that McCole Hardman range of like, okay, he could be a comfort blanket or somebody for Patrick Mahomes to go to. And in the first game on the biggest stage on banner night with no Travis Kelce, Sky Moore is targeted 3 times, 0 catches, 0 yards. How are you spinning that? How are you looking at that as we kind of assess this wide receiver meltdown that we had in week 1?
You with this word meltdown is crazy. But
how do you describe it? How else would you describe it?
Hold on, let me give you the context here, Aaron. There's always context behind everything. So the 3 targets he had. The first one, the ball was thrown super high. He jumped as high as he could, and he got fingertips on it. I mean, if you want to count that as a drop, go ahead. That was a scramble play. The ball was high. Sky Moore's not the tallest guy in the world. I'm not going to really put that on him. The second drop or target, whatever you want to call it, it was a slant route, and the ball was behind him. He had to contort his body all the other side. Like, I'm not expecting the guy to catch that when he's going full speed one way and the
It's a
ball's
lot of
thrown on the
cape. It's a
opposite
lot of
hip.
cape going on right now.
I mean,
We can
that's a bad
argue the
throw. That's a
we can
bad
argue the
throw.
semantics of like the targets
That's a bad
themselves. That's
throw.
not necessarily what I was trying to go for. He didn't look involved in the offense. It didn't look like they
No,
had
I'm
whatever.
getting there.
Go ahead.
I'm not done yet. I'm just going off the targets first, and I'm gonna go from there. And then the last one was 4th and 25. I mean, whatever. He could have caught it. I mean, that's a Hail Mary throw. If he catches it, it's going in the Chiefs' lore forever. 4th and 25, whatever. Okay, but I got the 3 targets out the way. All 3 targets were not normal situations, not clean. Besides that, though, if you watch the film, and I saw some all 22, there were several times, and Mahomes spoke on this, where he could have got the ball out earlier, where Sky Moore was actually open a few times. And he even it looked like he looked this way. He didn't even pull the trigger. I don't know if that was a lack of confidence, lack of trust in Sky Moore, but there were times where he was open. So it's not all on the receivers like we alluded to earlier. It was some on Patrick Mahomes as well, not getting the ball out on time, not trusting his guys. You know, maybe the offensive line at times, the pocket collapsed, and you get a little jittery feet there. We know Mahomes' footwork can get inconsistent at times. So I'm not going to put it all in the receiver room, because at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the world, and we have to hold him to that standard. We can't just alleviate him from negative comments or critiques when things aren't going well. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I do think they bounce back week 2, though.
Appreciate y'all going crazy in the chat. D-Mac taps in, says he was open within structure, talking about Sky Moore on the first target. Mahomes just didn't see him, which you talked about. Accountability from the Kingdom Queens podcast. Appreciate them tapping in with us. Love from Chiefs Kingdom. Look, the Sky Moore thing, to me, I'm willing to be a little bit more patient on it. This is why I was yellow light Ladd when you kind of brought up the thing last time about him being 800-yard receiver. These guys weren't in rhythm. They weren't in sync. And this Chiefs offense, as Patrick Mahomes talked about a lot today, is predicated on the quarterback and the receiver seeing the same thing from the defense, from interpreting what the defense is giving them and going ahead and being on the same page. And it does not take much to throw off that focus. I think what I worry about with Kadarius Toney, and we're talking about meltdown, and yeah, I'm going to use meltdown as a word because I believe that was a winnable game, Mark. Like, I believe that, without some of the issues that happened inside that room, Kansas City is in field goal position with an opportunity to win a close game at home that maybe looked ugly, but you got the win. The thing that really killed me with Kadarius Toney is confidence, right? I thought the drop on the 4th down drive to kick it off, that was the play, right? That was the one where, you make that play and all is forgotten about, the time you missed, or all is forgetting about your knee surgery. He was asked today if he has complete confidence in his knee and kind of danced around that. I mean, there's no way he can be completely confident in now the knee, and then secondarily the hands. Like, it's going to be kind of a work in progress, especially when Kelsey is not there. I think the good news going into Jacksonville is that he's trending in the right direction. We spent a lot of time on the wide receiver talk. I still want to break down week 1, but let's move a little bit faster now. I was impressed by the defense. 14 points allowed on defense. The big stop on 4th down from Justin Reed to put the ball back in the offense's hands to go win it, do the 2-minute drill, go ahead and make the plays. Just didn't shake out that way. But I still thought with Chris Jones in Arrowhead, but in Sweet instead, not playing, big plays from Mike Dana, who's a Detroit native. We talked after the game about his sack on Jared Goff. I thought Trent McDuffie on the forced fumble. I mean, like, they made the plays they needed to make and showed me that, a defense that maybe we thought started slow in the past can hit the ground running and show us some impressive things early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I told you before that game they would only allow 14 points without Chris Jones, you would have took that in a heartbeat. And on one of those drives, the first touchdown, it came after they went for it on 4th down with that fake punt, in their own 20-yard line. Like, who's expecting somebody to do that? So I definitely think that was a detriment to the defense at that time, because you just got to stop. You're thinking you got a 3 and out. Now you got to go back out there. You're tired.
Gutsy, man.
So,
That was gutsy. And we mentioned it on the preview leading up to this game. We were talking about, hey, their teams have gone for it on fourth down in situations where you traditionally wouldn't. They've done that against the Chiefs because the possession is so valuable against them. That won them the game, essentially. And that was a fake punt in their own, like, was it 20 or 30
Yeah, it was
yard
like
line?
their own 20-yard line. Yeah, that was pretty impressive there. But yeah, I mean, overall, the defense definitely played pretty good. The pass rush was kind of spotty at times. You expect that with no Chris Jones, but I did like what I saw in flashes from Felix. FAU showed some flashes. There was one play back in their own end zone. He almost had a safety, and Jared Goff got it off barely in time there. So he definitely showed some flash in the pass rush game. I thought George Karlaftis was really good at setting the edge in the run game. I mean, they were pretty stifled for the first three quarters. They kind of got going in the fourth with their run game a little bit. But for the most part, I mean, you hut them to under 4 yards a carry without your best guy in the middle. I mean, you can't really ask for much more. Thought the back end was pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be excited about what this defense can look like when you have Chris Jones back and Charles Omenihu, who's suspended for the first 6 games. He'll be back week 7 against the Chargers. So I still feel really good about me saying this can be a top 10 defense when you have everybody there and full and healthy.
Hefe KC from YouTube says King Felix with the crown emoji, and CJ Jones chimes in with GK and Dana had some great pressures. One of the best games that we've seen from Mike Dana,
Dana
against his hometown team. Another thing that I'm maybe worried about and looking towards as the early season develops here for the Kansas City Chiefs is, of course, third down efficiencies. I wonder if you think this is something or nothing. The Chiefs kind of struggling on third down, which is something that's uncharacteristic from Mahomes and company. KC 5 of 14 on third down. The money down with Mahomes and company against Jared Goff. They weren't much better, 5 of 15. But, you know, when I picture a Mahomes-led offense, especially at home at Arrowhead, I see an offense that's much more efficient. And maybe this is just a product of them being behind the chains in some things. There was opportunities where there were third and short and still not picking those up. Is this something or nothing, the Chiefs kind of struggling on third down to start the year at home?
I think it's nothing. I mean, as long as you have Travis Kelce there, I think that changes things a lot.
Yeah.
Especially on those third and mediums when it's an obvious passing situation. You have that security blanket there and Kelce in the middle of the field. And then if not, teams double them. You know, you would hope that you have an advantage on the outside with one of your guys being freed open. I think that was also another issue just in general, not just third down. It's about the receiving room. You know, this happened 48 hours before the game started, that you knew Travis Kelce wasn't going to be there. Maybe if you knew a week before, you had more time to prepare and alter your game plan without Travis Kelce. But the fact that it happened so close to kickoff, I do think there is a thing there where it's not enough time to completely unscript your game plan, if you would. So now with him back, I think that puts everybody back into their natural place and where guys are more comfortable. So I'm not concerned about third down moving forward as long as Big 87 is there.
I think it's a timing thing as well. I mean, when you say rust and when we talk about the Chiefs offense, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of it's predicated on all parties being on the same page. And that is something I think Kansas City will kind of grow into and mature into as the season goes on. All right, 20 minutes into episode 55 of Chiefs Coast to Coast. Mark Gunnels and Aaron Ladd here. Let's talk Chris Jones, because our long national nightmare has finally come to an end, Margo. I mean, oh my goodness. It was a Tuesday here in the week between week 1 and week 2, and the notification that we've all been waiting for, rap sheet, and everybody's been tapped in and waiting for Adam Schefter to ping their phone with this when it finally comes across. And my initial reaction is a 1-year deal. I understand why. I get it. And I know that the goal was a long-term contract, and he's already reiterated once again. We're about to hear from Chris Jones again at the podium talking on Wednesday after signing this 1-year deal. But I think of all the options that could have been presented, this almost feels like a white flag a little bit. I don't know. It confuses me a little bit, Mark, because what were you holding out for? This could not have been what you pictured when you decided not to come to St. Joe or training camp. Let's get your thoughts on it, and then we'll toss it to Chris Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was everybody's initial reaction. A 1-year deal. What is that about? Like, is this for next year? And no, it was basically just tearing apart the current deal and giving him a raise for this season. So he's still set to be a free agent after the year. I think it was one of those situations where I think Chris Jones kind of took control of the situation over the Katz brothers, and he wanted to get back in the room with his brothers and say, you know what? Obviously, a long-term deal is not going to happen. So why should I keep incurring these missed game checks when I'm not going to get what I want right now? So I might as well come back now, get it out the way, and we can come back to the table after the season. That's how I looked at it, just to get back in there and not waste any more time. And then they'll revisit again back in February and March. But I'm leaning towards this will be his last year in Kansas City. I don't think that Brett Veach and the Hunts are going to move off their number. And I don't think there's anything that Chris Jones can do this year that would make that happen. And yeah, so enjoy the last ride. I think Chiefs Kingdom with 95 there. I think the writing's on the wall here.
Let's hop to Chris Jones at the podium. He talked Wednesday. Hear from the man himself back in Kansas City. The holdout officially over.
Happy to be back. Okay, the business aspect, you can't get personal into it. You know, when you get personal, things can turn bad. You know what I mean? I never took it personal. I did take some of the stuff y'all said on Twitter about me personal. Like, I just want y'all to know, I keep receipts. Okay, talking to all y'all that's been talking stuff on Twitter, I keep receipts, and yeah.
I think he's talking about you, Mark Gunnels. I'm not even gonna lie.
What did I say?
He has been listening to Chiefs Coast to Coast, and actually shout out the chat for alerting me to this. Chris actually just quote tweeted the tweet of that I sent out earlier today, and there's an hourglass and then a receipt emoji. So he's doubling down. I mean, he's tripling down on saying that he's got the receipts from all of y'all saying over the holdout that he was selfish, that he was unmotivated, that he didn't want to play for a winner anymore. There was a lot of this had gotten toxic. I mean, we can just call it for what it is. I don't want to say that the Chiefs Kingdom made it toxic, but there was a point in the negotiations between Chris Jones, the front office, social media. It didn't look like a deal was going to get done. I think you're dead on right about calling this just kind of a Band-Aid. This is kind of lipstick on a pig. Like, he didn't get any of his incentives that he basically, and Andrew Brandt breaks it down really well on Twitter. He basically is just kind of breaking even, if you will, after holding out 6 weeks. And this is from Andrew Brandt on X. Chris Jones now has $1.1 million less than before due to missing week 1. Incentives he already had, and the biggest one requires he wins the Defensive Player of the Year and the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. No new money in the deal. I mean, look, it just I feel bad for Chris in this situation because I almost feel like he was taken advantage of by some bad representation. Yes, he deserved a better deal. Yes, he deserved more value in his contract. Had the best year of his life last year, and KC won a Super Bowl. But the Chiefs were very adamant and clear that they weren't going to go over $30 million for a guy that was over 30 years old. And the Katz brothers, instead of, and this is just my guess, this is not me reporting, please don't aggregate me. Instead of knowing how to play ball with the Chiefs, they basically just spun Chris in a circle. And like you said, he eventually figured out what time it was and said, let me just get what I can get and go back and play.
Yeah. And I want fans to know this. And I think he kind of addressed this. We're going to get to that clip here soon. None of this is personal. You know, it's all business. He still has a great relationship on the surface, you know, based on what he said with Andy and Brett Veach. And, you know, I know fans can sometimes take these things a different way. But to the Chiefs Kingdom defense, he did do a lot of trolling. Like, we got to acknowledge that. He did a lot of trolling on social media. And obviously, he knew what he was doing when he was throughout the summer. So,
but Mark, you know how it could feel personal, right? Like, obviously these contract negotiations aren't inherently personal. It's a business deal. But when you're talking about assigning a number value to someone's actual worth and their body and what they've given to your organization, he's underpaid.
Well, I mean, the question is it true or not that he wants to get paid more than Aaron Donald? Because if that's the case, I'm on the Chiefs side and saying no. Aaron Donald is a generational talent, and Chris Jones about to turn 30 years old soon. And we already know about how Brett Veach is with that third contract for guys when they're entering their 30s. And, if the whole thing was at first we heard about he wants to be just the second highest paid guy. And I think the Chiefs are willing to do that. But if it's talking about getting paid more than Aaron Donald, then I think that's where they draw the line. But let's get to the sound with Chris Jones talking about Andy and his relationship with Brett Veach.
I think you as reporters and fans kind of miscrew the contract thing. It's never personal. I don't think I start hating Coach Reed or I start disliking Veach. I love Veach. He knows I love him. We had on and off conversation throughout it all. Coach Reed, I love him too. Me and him still calling texts. We actually got a group text. Veach said that I retweeted a picture where it was like Chris Jones after season, Chris Jones off season, where I was big with no neck. And we actually had a little joke about that through the midst of it. So I don't think our relationship was affected any about that. They know how much I love this organization. They know how much I love this team. And I don't think that affected any part of our relationship.
Cap. Big cap.
What part are you calling cap on?
I don't think that this infected our relationship. Mark, come on, dog. There's no way that the relationship will never be the same. And that was part of what I wrote down in our notes coming into this. How does this see how you impact 2023? And then how does this see how you impact 2024? Now, for me in 2023, Chris Jones is a consummate professional. He's going to give it everything he's got for these 16 games plus the playoffs. He is a competitor. I bet it ate him up. He didn't admit this at the podium today, but I bet it ate him up to be sitting in that suite and see the banner drop and not be able to run out that tunnel with his brothers and go out there and play with them. Like, I think he's going to give it everything he's got to prove to them that they messed up by not signing him to a long-term deal. But as far as his future here in Kansas City, it's cooked. It's done. You let in with it. It's finito. He already understands now through this process that they're not going to be able to meet what he sees his value is. And you think he's going to see his value as going down after this year? I think him getting up there, I think he should have talked today, and like the Ronald McDonald thing that we talked about before, him talking is not a bad thing. Him tweeting is a bad thing, because I think when he gets on Twitter and when he gets in that situation and when he's replying to fans one-on-one, that gets dicey. But when he's talking honestly from what his perspective is and at a podium and where you can hear him and kind of see his mannerisms, I think he does a lot better and he maybe gets himself a little bit further. But I think there's a lot of cap in that rap, that statement we just ran.
So here's one thing I will say, though, just to play the other side. And I really do think there is a pathway for this. While I do think this is his last year in Kansas City, I get the impression that you think no matter what happens this year, the number can't change either way. I don't think that. Like, what if he doesn't play at a high level this year? What if he's not an all-pro or a Pro Bowler this year? You don't think anything can change at all in the negotiation process? Because what other team is going to be willing to pay him what he wants to be paid if he has a drop-off this year?
It's worth the conversation. I've had talked off mic with friends about this, like who would spend the money for a 30-plus-year-old pass rusher who's asking for $30 million. And all it takes is one team to say yes. I think the no tag part of his new 1-year deal is also a part where he kind of got played a little bit, because now Kansas City could, I don't possibly see them taking this avenue, but they could hypothetically tag him and trade him to somebody else, or just sit him on the roster again for, I think it's close to $30 million, according to Spotrac. Spotrac has the 2024 tag number for defensive tackle at $32.5 million, which is meaty. But Kansas City still has options. He really doesn't have any more options than what he came into the holdout with, Mark. So it's like, it's hard to see a situation where this whole thing does not impact the relationship. That's specifically what I'm calling cap on.
Okay, that's fair. And I will say this, though. I think for the Chiefs' perspective in this, they came out great, because now you got all these incentives for Chris Jones to try to meet to make as much money as he wants, or you're gonna have a super motivated Chris Jones. We know about the contract year being undefeated, so here we go again, round 2 with Chris Jones on that. And he has an incentive if they win the Super Bowl, right? He can get some more money. So if you're the Chiefs, I think this is as good as you could have gotten without coming to terms on a long-term deal.
The other part of the Chris Jones deal is a corresponding move that involves Joe Thuney. This is really quick. Doesn't need much, but just wanted to fill in our audience. This is from Field Yates on X. Says Chiefs needed to create some cap space with Chris Jones on the roster, so they restructured the contract of guard Joe Thuney, creating $8.7 million in 2023 cap space. Joe Thuney's deal seems to have a lot of these. Mahomes has a lot of these trap doors and places where they can find some wiggle room and that kind of thing. Very important for KC, who we know is up against the cap. How about something quickly? And I thought this was social media chatter and right up your alley. Was Juwan Taylor false starting? Because I don't know. I saw a few, like I'm watching from the Arrowhead press box, which is basically like watching from Kauffman Stadium, how far up and back from the line of scrimmage you actually are. But there were a couple of them where I'm watching on the broadcast. It looks like maybe he is getting, maybe a half a count or a half a step, but he knows the snap count. To me, I didn't think it was something that, of course, it came back and bit Kansas City at the worst possible time when they're trying to gain ground on the last drive. But I really see this as a non-issue, and Andy Reid, I think, kind of shot it down on Monday too.
Yeah, I think you would be naive to think there was a few there that he got away, that he didn't get away with. But I think majority of them, he just caught it at the perfect time. Like I saw this one clip, it had it in slow-mo, and he was right on time, but if you look on the broadcast angle, it looks like he was a little early. So I don't think it was as big a deal as people made it seem to be. But one thing I will say, though, I don't like the depth that he's at sometimes, because it tips off whether it's going to be a run or a pass. You're right. Like you could tell. And sometimes when it was a run, he was kind of leaning forward a little bit, kind of giving away what it's going to be. So, I think Andy actually spoke about that on his Monday presser, I believe, on a Zoom call. And he said something we're going to have to clean up there. So, but yeah, I mean, they have a great coaching staff with the offensive line. Andy Reid obviously has a lot of experience coaching offensive line. So I think they'll get together, but I'm not too worried about it moving forward.
Working out some timing in the early weeks of the season. Let's just jump into our game preview.
Stop it. You can't do this. You can't escape. You can't make these plays. You can't make these throws.
Come on, give us a sneak preview.
Chiefs preview.
All right, let's talk some injuries as we preview Chiefs and Jags. It is a beautiful noon game. Oh my goodness, nothing better than a nooner from Gates. I shouldn't have said, they got to sponsor us for that. Maybe that's something we could work on in the future. Injury report from Wednesday is pretty straightforward for the world champs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has an illness, did not practice on Wednesday. Chris Jones is back in a limited participant, and so is L'Jarius Sneed dealing with a knee injury. Travis Kelce, of course, last but certainly not least, who hyperextended his knee in the lead up to week 1, didn't play in that game. I believe it's the first game he missed due to injury since his rookie year. Do I have that right, Mark?
Yes, that is correct.
He was actually on the practice field. I caught that footage. That was, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, Mark Gunnels is going to love this one. Chris Jones and Travis Kelce embracing.
That was your thinking in that moment. You were thinking about me in that moment, bro.
There's certain things that when you see on the practice field, you're just like, oh, that is going to do really well on social. And like, those were the two guys that I knew I wanted coming into like practice. So I knew that like when that happened,
yeah, you're going viral on that one. You're gonna be in the upper right on a lot of TV shows tomorrow.
The upper right is sick. Yo, they just take it. They just take it. They don't even ask anymore. They just take it.
You got your courtesy though, so
That's not how it works, Mark. You're supposed to actually license. You're actually supposed to license the footage.
But you're not gonna say no. They know that.
Well, if I say no, then it doesn't get aired. Then they just run down the lines to the next reporter who gives it to them, essentially.
Yeah.
No, Travis obviously jumped into the arms of Chris Jones. I didn't see much other than that. For people who don't know, and I've said this on the platform before, but I want to make it clear, the media viewing window for practice that we get is maybe like 5 minutes. On a really good day, it's like 6.5. So we maybe get them stretching and doing like the individual drills just to kind of warm up. In that time period, I saw Travis Kelce moving around. He obviously was not 100%, but he's not giving 100% effort in that early portion of practice. He does look like a guy who is going to play on Sunday, in my estimation. And I did come on this platform last week and said he was probably not going to play against who'd they play? Against the Lions, and he didn't play against the Lions. So if my guess is if he's a limited participant on Wednesday, he'll be some sort of status, either questionable or game time decision for Sunday. And then, in my opinion, gives it a go.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he doesn't play, to be honest with you. He's a guy that takes pride. Obviously, you mentioned about his stat. That was the first game he missed due to injury since his rookie season. That was back in 2014, Aaron, almost a decade ago. That is incredible, especially at that position he plays. They're very physical there in the middle of the field. But I do think he's going to play. I think Chris Jones is going to play without limitations as well. I think it's just a little game of chicken, man. You got asked questions today, Andy Reid, about will he be limited? Talking about Chris Jones, kind of had a little smirk on his face when he answered that question. I don't think he's going to be limited. I really don't.
Well, can we put on our conspiracy hats for a moment?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's a world in which they don't have to play him because the incentives are playing time based, Mark Gunnels, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but hypothetically, let's say a guy who hasn't played football since February, hasn't participated in any of the workouts or lifts. I mean, he's been lifting on his own. He looks to be in good shape, but hypothetically, they look at him on Friday and say questionable. There's a world in which Chris Jones and you said he's going to play. I mean, he's going to be limited no matter what. He can go out there and play. It's going to be tough for him to go full speed, go from off the street to playing a full NFL football game.
Well, I mean, we just saw Nick Bosa do it against Pittsburgh last week. Similar situation, no practice, really, no training camp. And I don't think he was limited in that game. And so I don't see why. I get what you're saying, though, I don't think the Chiefs would do that because then you're just talking about the relationship being a little tarnished there. That would be kind of tricky if you're doing that, messing with a guy's potential incentives out of spite there, being a little facetious. So I don't think they're going to do that if he feels like he can be a full go, which I do think he will be.
I monitor CEH, and I think L'Jarius Sneed is going to be a guy who's on and off the injury report pretty much all year with the knee injury. You tweeted something, and you tweet a lot. Excuse me. I keep saying that. We're going to have to do like a fine. We're going to have to do like a fine bucket or do a fine bucket or something like this. You posted this on X, and I thought it would be perfect to take it to the show now. And it's about Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Mark posted, by the time the season is over, I think we're going to have a conversation about Trevor Lawrence being the second best quarterback in the league behind Patrick Mahomes. You said this after 1 week of the regular season. What did you see and what makes you feel so confident that he could really ascend into that upper echelon? Because I think most people agree that he's, past good. He's a solid starter. He's somebody that we could be considering great. What makes you think that he can ascend into that, I would say maybe even Jalen Hurts-esque category and be seen as an elite quarterback?
Well, first of all, this is not just based on 1 week of football. Before the year, I predicted him to win the MVP this year. I'm expecting a major leap in year 3, but it's not even about the year 3 thing. It's about year 2 in the same system under Doug Peterson. You could pretty much wipe out his rookie year. I mean, he had Urban Meyer as his head coach. He was getting lap dances in Ohio instead of joining the team plane back to Jacksonville. So, I mean, I don't think no rookie quarterback would have succeeded in that situation. So I kind of just throw that year out the window. Last year, you make the playoffs, you show a progression. And let's not forget, man, this is a guy that people were touting as a generational talent out of high school, let alone his time at Clemson. Number 1 pick. People were saying he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck, comparing him to Peyton Manning. And I think we're starting to really see the potential now. Now you pair him with a guy who I think is going to be his Stephon Diggs to Josh Allen and Calvin Ridley. You know, when Stephon Diggs was in Minnesota, we looked at him as a good receiver, but not elite, right? Because he didn't have that guy that can make all the throws. Now you compare him with Josh Allen, we're having top 5 conversations about Stephon Diggs, similar with your boy Calvin Ridley in Atlanta. He didn't have a guy that could make all the throws there. He had an old Matt Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, there in Atlanta. And so you're very familiar with Calvin Ridley, what he can do, his route running ability, his hands. He's a guy that can go vertical as well. So I think you're pairing him now with the guy in Trevor Lawrence that can make all the throws. In week 1, he had 11 targets in their first real game together. So the chemistry's already there. It's only going to get better. So I think they both elevate each other. And when you combine that and then being in a Doug Peterson system, I think all the makings are there for Trevor Lawrence to be in that MVP conversation this year.
We know Doug Peterson's connection to the kingdom, of course, and he and Andy Reid have a relationship that dates back nearly 3 decades. He was a quarterback for the Packers while Andy Reid was his quarterbacks coach there, also played for Andy Reid in Philly, and then was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs under head coach Andy Reid. So a good relationship there. You mentioned Trevor Lawrence, and I actually asked Andy Reid about Trevor Lawrence today. Didn't give me a lot, but said a lot of the same things he said about Jared Goff in the lead up to last week's game, and I thought Jared Goff played well. Didn't make too many mistakes. Didn't put the ball in harm's way, and I see Trevor Lawrence is a lot similar type quarterback. He takes downfield risks a little bit more, and they surrounded him with so much talent on that offense. This is going to be much more of a like I see Detroit and Jacksonville kind of in the same light, but I think maybe Jacksonville is a further evolution. Like if they're Pokemon, the Jags are a more evolved form of what Detroit is eventually hoping to do with quarterback and kind of the skill players out on the outside. But Trevor Lawrence has done it at every level too. I mean, when you think about high school, college, pros, I look for him to make plays on Sunday. And I wouldn't be surprised. I know we expected a lot of points last week. I'm expecting a lot of points this week, Mark Gunnels. And one thing I'm worried about from Kansas City's perspective, and we don't have to stump on this forever because this is something I feel like will be something that comes up frequently as we go through our season here on Coast to Coast. The Chiefs can't run the ball, man. They can't run the ball. For a team that's coming out of training camp, an Andy Reid training camp that everybody talks about is so tough and so grueling, and we focus on this and we focus on that. You had 90 yards week 1, and Patrick Mahomes was 45 of them.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they can't run the ball, though. I think that's a little overreaction on your part. I mean, we saw in the playoffs last year, especially against this particular Jacksonville Jaguars team. And I think they averaged over 6 yards a carry in that game. I think when they're dedicated to the run and they get a little more creative in their schemes, and we didn't see much McKinnon as well involved in that game. So I'm not going to go that far. I think Pacheco needs more touches to get more in the rhythm. And I think they're a rhythm running team. But I will say this, I think they still struggle running the ball on 3rd and short. I'll say that, like 3rd and 1 situations. I do think there is a struggle there, but I'm not going to say they can't run the ball. I think you're going a little too far there. But I do want to ask you this before we, unless you want to push back on that real quick. I do want to ask you this, since you being the Atlanta guy here. How much does it pain you to see Calvin Ridley balling out on a new team?
Doesn't pain me at all. I know that there is draft compensation attached to that pick. So Calvin Ridley,
only like a 4th or a 5th?
I think it's a 2nd. I think it's a 2nd round pick.
I thought you got really.
I think I think if he goes over 1,000 yards this year,
it's like one of yeah, so you want him to ball out.
Yeah, and I'm rooting for Calvin. A lot of people don't know behind the scenes, and this is specific to Chiefs Jag, so we can stay here for a little bit. But he was having some mental health issues before he got involved in the whole sports betting thing. And there was a thing in Atlanta around that time where like a lot of famous athletes and stuff, their house were getting broke into, people were getting run up, and like he had a newborn daughter that was involved in an incident, and that kind of impacted his ability to just focus on day to day. Like he didn't want to leave the house, and he wrote a really good story in, I believe it's Untitled. What's the athlete? The athlete platform where
Uninterrupted.
uninterrupted. It was one of those. It was one of those. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that there, but good material if you just want to root for Calvin Ridley, the player. Spent a lot of time away from the game, and that can already mess with your head on top of what had already happened there. It was cool to see him ball out. I mean, his first half last week, I think he had like almost 100 yards receiving. So it seems like, and they were raving about him all training camp. It would have been great to see what he could offer the Atlanta Falcons, but that's secondary to whatever he was going through. And I'm just glad to see him start to have some success there. Can we go from positive news to what you offered in Vegas?
Oh my God, let's go.
Place your bets.
Oh, there it is. 2 touchdowns. Win by at least 3.
Let's go to Vegas with Mark.
Let's put a bow on the Calvin Ridley thing. D-Mac, I mean, this dude is an encyclopedia. We got to start calling him the encyclopedia. He's got the Calvin Ridley details. He said if he hit a playing time percentage, it becomes a third. If he signs an extension, it's a second. He had a crazy game. The Chiefs secondary is definitely going to be a big test. I look forward to that second rounder hitting. I look forward to Mark Gunnels hopefully rebounding from his week 1 performance, because Lord have mercy, the only way to go is up. The only way to go is up. You went 0-3 week 1, and the picks were as follows. You took the spread, Chiefs 4.5. Lions won by 1. He's big on Sky Moore this year, as you all know, so he took the over on 44.5, which I thought was a free winner. I thought that was money. I thought that was guaranteed. I actually co-signed that one, so I'll eat this as well, as Sky Moore has 3 targets for 0 yards, so that's 0 for 2. And then finally, the over on Mahomes total touchdowns at 2.5, which was close. Mahomes finished with 2, and Mark Gunnels finishes week 1 without a win. But that's it. That's fine. It's in the rear view mirror. That was last week. We're on to this week. Mark Gunnels has got his for the audio only audience. Let me show you what Mark Gunnels is wearing. He's got his Mizzou shirt on this week. He's got black and gold on just in time for K-State week.
This dude is nasty.
He's rooting for the Tigers against the Cats this Saturday in Columbia, and he's got 3 more winners for you in the NFL. In the NFL world, bounce back Mark is here. What you got for us?
All right, man. So like you said last week, and you said this, it's not how you start, man. It's how you finish, buddy. I got 80 more plays to go this year, something like that. It's a long year, bud. So 0-3 is not going to phase me. Let's go. I'm starting off. We're here. I'm not even playing with the spread this week because it's too close. Give me Chiefs money line, baby. Chiefs win outright. Take that to the bank. Chiefs are going to win this game. They're not starting off 0-2. My second play, I got a player prop, actually 2 player props for you. Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. I do think he's going to play this week. The props are out. We know Vegas knows all, so they wouldn't have him out there if they don't think he's going to play. He's practicing in limited capacity. He looked pretty good in that video you posted, jumping up on Chris Jones. So I do think there will be an emphasis to give him the ball, especially in the red zone. So he gets in the end zone. And then my last play, I'm actually going with the Jaguars here. I'm taking the under on the receiving yards for Evan Ingram. They got it at 42.5, Aaron. Could I tell you last year in the 2 games against the Chiefs, in the playoff game, he only had 16 yards. And then, 31 yards in the playoff game. And the regular season game, he only had 14. So he barely hit over 42.5 in both games combined against the Chiefs. And I think their old line's a little banged up. So I think he's going to be in there blocking a little bit more than he would want to, especially with Chris Jones back. So I don't see him being much of a factor in the receiving game. So those are my 3 plays this week. Chiefs money line, Travis Kelce anytime touchdown, and the under on Evan Ingram's receiving yards at 42.5.
I like the Evan Ingram play a lot. If I had to star one of your picks, I think there's a lot of mouths to feed in that Jacksonville offense. I think Yes, I think high flying, but I think I could see a world in which he's the guy that maybe has a little bit less on his plate than everyone else. You mentioned Calvin Ridley, obviously ETN. There's another guy I'm thinking of, Christian Kirk, who just
Zay Jones
killed the
too.
Chiefs. Zay Jones had a highlight catch. So there's an easy way for somebody to be left out of that offense. If I'm riding with one of your picks, it's that one here. Mark Gunnels trying to rebound from an 0-3 start to the 2023 season. Let us know what you do. 816-514-1267 is the voicemail line, so you can let us know how Mark did in his plays this week.
Yeah, if I go 0-3 again, man, I'm gonna be in complete shambles. I'll tell you that. I would be in complete 0-6 is nasty.
You got to stop. I remember 1 week last year, you just like took a week off. You were like, yeah, no plays this week. The house is closed. You boarded up the doors for 1 day.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie. Put this on wax. If I go 0-3 again, I'm probably will take a week off next week. I'm saying that right now.
Serta, clip
The house on it.
He bet the house on it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's go through our chat here on the way out. Chance of thunderstorms for Sunday's game. I did see it could be some rainy weather in Columbia for that big game and for Jacksonville for this one. So if you're headed out to the game, take pictures, send us pictures, wear your ponchos, that kind of thing. This from Sean, and I thought this was interesting. Weird. Yeah, it'll rain for like 2 hours, and then it'll be the rest of the day will be fine.
Yeah. But now, what we got in the chat? What are you looking at?
Sean says, I think this is in relation to Chris Jones. I bet Andy hates playing him this week after missing all preseason. Andy is a little old school in that way. Sean is dead on about this because Andy Reid is one of those guys where if you don't practice, you don't necessarily play unless your name is like Mahomes, Kelsey, or in this situation, Jones. I think if Andy Reid, really had his way, he would try to send a message because there was kind of this sanctity of the team that was disturbed by this. You can't just, I understand that you want to move forward with the relationship and you don't want to, really harp on the holdout and all the things and the time missed because that's history. But that's why I called Cap earlier. There's no way that the relationship stays the same after something like this. It has to be impacted. Yeah.
And then also with Chris Jones being on the defensive side of the ball, I'm not sure how much. I mean, obviously he's the head coach, so he can say whatever he wants. But I do think that he does kind of tend to let Spags kind of run the operation how he wants to for the most part.
I think that's pretty much it for the chat.
You didn't give your pick. Who you got winning this week?
Somebody asked me for a pick, and I said Chiefs 27-23. I changed my mind so much on these type of things. Of course, I'm gonna have my eye on the injury report if a Snead doesn't play or they say Chris Jones isn't ready. Like obviously that would impact things. But 27-23, I said that out loud, and that doesn't sound like enough points to me. I feel like it might be more high scoring than that.
Well, the over-under right now is at 51.5. So you're close to that number with your score prediction. That'll be 50. So sounds like you like the over if you want to go a little higher than that. But
nobody likes betting unders. I mean, who you bet an Evan Ingram under is like the most enjoyable under. I feel like,
Yeah, it's just like the sweet spot for that. Yeah.
Good show, clean show. Your Wi-Fi worked. I mean, you got to wear a Mizzou shirt more often, man.
You're not gonna let that one episode go, are you? This guy.
Mark Gunnels in LA, Aaron Ladd here in KC, Steven Serta behind the board. That was episode 55. We're back with 56 next week, recapping maybe a Chiefs win, hopefully a Chiefs win. We'll see. Coast to Coast boys out of here.
Peace.